So, welcome, everybody. Today we've got an amazing guest. I'm so excited to bring Kevin on. Kevin and I have worked together well over, it's been 23 years that I've been in the business, and I've known Kevin for that entire time. So clearly he's been around longer than I have. Let's just talk a little bit about his background. He's obtained his BA, his BS, actually, his business Bachelor of Science degree from the University of Laverne and a magna cum laude at an MBA and an MBA from the University of Redlands. He started his career in the real estate industry by working in banking, and that was back in 1993. So while working for some of the nation's largest savings institution, Kevin received extensive training in lending, sales, appraisals, banking, back office, escrow, and title, of course, probate, retail, and commercial banking. Kevin brought his extensive experience to the title industry in early 1999. As a probate specialist, Kevin reviews several files and scenarios daily that involve deceased parties, probate, trust, and estates, court orders, and etc. He has a never say die kind of an attitude and knows how to close the deals. It is estimated that he has closed well over 15,000 transactions while working as a title representative. He uses his knowledge and firsthand experience to help close even the toughest transactions. Kevin has authored 2 real estate books, Probate Real Estate Sales 101, and it was actually the first book, and it was an Amazon bestseller. Okay, his second book is The Wholesaler's Guide to Closing Real Estate Deals. These are great. Currently, Kevin helps attorneys, real estate agents, and investors close transactions as a vice president and probate expert at Lawyers Title. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show, Kevin.
Thank you so much, Toni. I appreciate it.
You know, it's so, first of all, it's so wild how the time flies, because here we are, in 2023, and we both have been in this thing for quite some time. So I want to get a kind of an overview of your journey. I think starting in your banking industry and then transitioning into the real estate. Yeah, give us a little overview on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was a branch manager with Household Bank, which was ended up being bought by Home Savings of America. And
Okay.
I actually, when I started with Household Bank, I was in a management training program.
Okay.
And the program that we were in was intense. I feel like it was like being in a master's degree program. I mean, I had presentations to the president of the company. We had research reports. We were doing all kinds of work, and it was all for us to learn every aspect of banking. And we did that. I did 2 appraisals when I was there. I mean, obviously the appraiser actually did the appraisals, but I walked it with him. I measured with him. I looked at the comps and helped him put the report together. So
Yeah.
they just every part that you can think of about banking and lending, and I was in that, and I loved it. It worked out that when Home Savings of America bought our bank, I ended up training. They started a pilot program for consumer lending. So I was the person that traveled from Ojai to San Diego and trained the 55 branch managers that were going to be in that pilot, because I knew lending at that point. I had learned lending from the company I was with, et cetera. So just had good, well-rounded experience. And so when Home Savings was purchased by Washington Mutual, the opportunity came for me to leave, and the title company that was hiring was looking for me. I actually didn't even know I was going to interview at a title company. I thought I was
Wow.
going to interview at the lender that owned that title company. But
Okay.
they were looking for my exact background. They were looking for someone who had lending
Wow.
background, who was a training manager, or could be a training manager. At that time I was a training manager. I had, moved on from being a branch manager, and it worked out perfectly. Well, when I got to the title company, I realized how much I actually knew. For
Hmm.
example, when I was the branch manager at the Crenshaw Slauson branch of Home Savings, if you remember, that branch was burned in the civil unrest in '92. And
Okay.
so, 3 years after that, I'm the manager there. And back in those days, the bank would keep original court documents for conservatorship cases, for guardianship cases, maybe even some probate cases. And as people would come in to do transactions on the account, when the party would come in, we'd pull out their original documents, look at the case. Okay, yeah, you're authorized to do this. Okay, we're good to make your transaction. Well, you can imagine what it's like when a person comes in, a guardian comes in, and they have to do a transaction for the child that they're guardian over, and we say, "Oh, the records on your case were burned, and we can't do your transaction until we get those records." So
Oh, wow.
when I was at the bank, I ended up having to do a lot of work in the probate trust and estates area. I would go to the courthouse and recreate files. I had to look at the documents.
Mm.
That plus the fact that when you're in banking, you have to know a little bit about probate because we had different under the sections of probate law called small probates administration. There's different codes on things that can be done depending on the value of different property, and so I had to know some of that, and we had forms that went along with that. So it wasn't until I started doing my current job at a title company that I
Yeah.
realized, oh, I didn't know I knew so much about probate and all this. I thought the knowledge I had, everybody has, because
Yeah.
when you learn things over time, you don't remember where you learned them. You
Right.
just you
Right.
just now have the knowledge, right? And so I realized how much I knew, and because of that, my clients started realizing how much I knew, and over time, I started getting more and more referrals and clients coming to me with their probate, trust, conservatorship, power
Yeah.
of attorney, anything with a deceased party type of transactions. And it kind of it helped, the sheer volume helped me carve out that niche and that
Yep.
ability to give service in that. But that's how I started in banking, and it was a real good background. Um, Household bank, if you remember household finance,
Yes. Yes.
back when there was Beneficial Financial, American
Yeah.
General, Household Finance. Household was the largest of them, and they were, I guess you could say, like a hard. You'd probably call it today non-QM, right? They were
Yeah.
hard money lender, but they were a large institution. They weren't, a loan
Yeah.
shark, but they
Yeah.
did kind of hard money type of loans, and they were just a lender. Well, on the banking side, we had the same lending mentality, the same lending drive and desire, the same lending system, the same lending
Wow.
underwriters. It's just that we did it in a bank and with more A paper type of situations. But it just gave me such a strong background that I use on a daily basis in this industry today because underwriting is underwriting.
Yeah.
In title insurance, we underwrite title risks. In lending, you underwrite loan risks. But the general concept is similar. You have to mitigate your risk so you don't take a loss.
Right.
And I pull daily from my underwriting background at the bank, in what I do as a title person.
Yeah. Wow. That's interesting. I had never really looked at the two industries and recognized the similarities, you
Yeah.
know, and it's true. The lending has a certain level of, obviously, a huge level of risk that they take. And then there's the insurance side of it that is, again, mitigating these risks. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's really fantastic that you've got a combination of these two, which really really sets you apart from your colleagues.
Yeah.
How many of your peers and colleagues have had this extensive background in banking that overlaps with the insurance process?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, what are some of the key strategies or tips that you can provide for successfully closing real estate deals, especially deals that are very, very complex scenarios like probate trust? I'm sure you've seen them all. What are some strategies that you could speak to that realtors and or even consumers should watch out for?
So I'll address it on two different angles. On the consumer side, is make sure you're using professionals that know that business. Every doctor does not do brain surgery. I think we
Yep.
all know that. We all understand that. If I go to my podiatrist, I wouldn't expect him to do surgery on my brain. Yet I've had transactions where the divorce attorney, the family law attorney is doing the probate case. And
Mm,
there's probably many that can do both and do it fine. Sometimes it's not the case. And I've seen issues that just are shocking. And it's like, wow, this, sometimes you don't, because I'm just working on the title insurance portion, I don't
yeah.
know the background of the attorney and all that. And you realize in the transaction, you go, oh, this person doesn't know one, real estate, and two, probate. And an attorney told me long ago that every attorney that does probate has to understand real estate because the lion's
Mm,
share of probate cases
it's
are
really,
real estate. And you have to
yeah.
understand the laws that go around that, how a quiet title would work, all of those things. So it's interesting that they have to have those two. And when you work with someone who doesn't, it's a big thing. So number one, for the individuals, for the individual consumer, I can tell you right now, I have a job, not primarily, but largely because people do try to do things on their own. A large
Yeah.
portion of my job, I'll say it this way, a large portion of my job is figuring out how are we going to correct the mistakes that the consumer made, the individual person made on title to their property, in doing their deeds, in their trust documentation or whatever they did. How do we unwind the issues that
Yep.
or the things they failed to do? So dealing with a professional, getting proper legal advice and proper tax advice would be my comments to an individual consumer.
Yep.
As for the real estate agents, my comment would be check things out ahead of time. There's no reason for a problem to come up while you're in escrow, because typically when it's a probate case, you're probably involved as soon as they meet the attorney. The agent is probably involved with that client as soon as they meet
Yep.
the attorney. You have
Yep.
maybe 2 months before they're actually appointed to be in charge, and then you put it on the market. And in today's market, it sits for 2 weeks or 3 weeks. So
Yeah.
you have time. We should know the issues or problems that are on that situation at that point. I have found, Toni, over the years, and I don't have exact figures. I'm going to guesstimate, and I've guesstimated this over and over, and I kind of double check my figures to see if it's right. It seems to be about right. I guesstimate that between 30 and 40% of properties where there's a deceased party have some issue that people don't know about.
Yeah.
It may be a simple, easy issue. It may be something complicated that could completely stop you from closing your transaction. But the fact is, 30 to 40% of them. And identifying that early
Yeah.
is the best way to deal with it.
Is key.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's like hot and cold. Most of the situations are either clean as a whistle, meaning like there's almost nothing on the property, or they have some issue that needs to be handled. There's no kind of in between. But yeah, so that's my biggest recommendation to the real estate agents is you should be reviewing that stuff ahead of time. And often agents will say, "Oh, I'm going to go to a listing appointment next week and I want to get a prelim." Well, preliminary title reports cost title companies a few $100s probably to create.
Right.
We shouldn't really do a prelim until the client has committed to you, till they've signed a listing agreement or at least started that probate case with the attorney and they're going to be working with you. And so, but the thing that most people don't realize is virtually everything that's on a prelim, you can find that through the customer service department of the title company. So we can figure that out. I don't know if you can hear this. So there's a gardener outside, and I don't know if that noise is.
I can't hear it. Can't hear it.
Okay, good. Okay,
We're good.
I wanted to open the window because my office gets a little warm, but I didn't know if you could hear that. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I would say is that you could doing proper research with customer service or contacting someone like me who can do a little
Yeah.
research for you, make sure things are clear before you move forward is a big one because you can prevent issues from happening
Yeah.
down the road.
Yeah. That's awesome. Um, and I recommend to all realtors that are working with any listing that you do just exactly what you've explained. You do your research before the moment somebody calls me and says, "Toni, we are thinking about selling." The first thing I do is I go to title and I pull it up and I look and see what's sitting there. And then I will go a step further and I'll call your customer service and I'll ask them, can you send me the chain of title? Can you send me, a rundown on the property profile so I can see potentially what might be lurking out there.
Yeah,
So
and that's so important. I'm glad you do that because that's the reason we have our customer service department anyways, for that reason. And
yeah,
just this week, a client called me. Actually, it was Friday of last week. A client called me, and someone was telling them it's their property, et cetera, et cetera. And so, he knew enough to call. He called. I checked things out for him. And yeah, that person is not even the owner of the property that they
Mm,
were trying to have this agent do some research and background and comps and all that kind of stuff on. So it's it's um it's it's a big time saver, and it's important to know what you're dealing with before you get into it.
absolutely. Absolutely. You know, so here's one in with regard to the probate. I know you review hundreds and hundreds of files and scenarios, and we'd like you to share a particularly challenging or memorable transaction, if you could, obviously without disclosing, any privacy rights that you've encountered, and how you successfully closed the deal. Do you have any one in particular that stands out? That's like, I'll
Yeah,
never forget this deal.
I'm thinking of two. I have a lot that I'll never forget, so I could talk your ears off. I mean, literally, there's a lot that jumps to mind. I'm going to think of two that I think might be the most beneficial right now. So one is, I was alluding to it a moment ago. A divorce attorney, I think she was a family law attorney, was doing this probate case. And in the beginning, and I didn't know in the beginning, right? So in the beginning, when I reviewed things, there were a couple issues on title that needed to be resolved, big issues that were problems. I think the decedent may have had dementia towards the end. It did some things that just made no sense. And
Mhm.
so, like deeding to an entity that never existed, that doesn't exist and never exists, and stuff like that. And
Mm,
so
mm,
I told that attorney in the beginning, you have to have a court order voiding these deeds,
yeah.
because otherwise we have to think that this entity, which is not really an entity, may have some interest, or someone could come back and make some claim. So
Mm,
told them that up front. There's a thing called the 850 petition that they do during probate, which is basically essentially a quiet title action to assert properties in this name. You can void deeds with that, etc. And so I said that. So let's just call this April-ish of year one.
yeah.
October, they send over an order confirming sale, meaning they have put the property on the market, sold the property, and the real estate agent was involved in that conversation. So both the real estate agent and myself, we both were thinking, the attorney, we had this conversation with the attorney knows, so they're doing that paperwork in the background.
Yeah.
They send over an order confirming sale saying, okay, you're ready to close. We've confirmed the sale in court, meaning they've listed it, they sold the property, they went into court, the court confirmed that buyer, and you're now ready to close, basically.
Yeah.
And so I asked for that order that I talked about. And the attorney goes, oh, you really need that? So she
Uh-oh.
knew and she remembered, but she thought I just said we need it just for funsies.
Wow.
Of course we need that. You have to, there's a chain of title, documents that record, provide legal disclosure, provide constructive notice, they change ownership of a property, etc. You've got to get those things clear. So she said, okay, I'll go back into court. Go back into court. And so this is October when they could have been closing. Now it's
Mm,
April of the next year. So
mm,
first, how much more property taxes are you paying? How much more insurance? How much more on your loan payment? Think of the cost just on property maintenance,
yes.
utility bills, etc. How much more are you paying during all this time? So in April, but now I've identified, okay, now I know, because before that I didn't know. I'm dealing with someone who doesn't really deal with this part of law and real estate all the time. So and this is kind of a touchy one because you don't want to step on someone's toes, but I work with a lot of attorneys. I speak to the bar association. I do presentations for them about different issues with title and what happens with their court orders and their cases. And
Yeah.
so um, I've learned over time to suggest, hey, before you finalize that order with the court, can you send it to me so I can review it? And then if there's any comments, I'll give you my comment. So she does that. There's stuff missing. I make my comments. And I'll just get particular. The documents that record, if I record a deed, the way you identify that deed, I could say the deed where Kevin conveyed to Toni on, February 1st, 1990, blah, blah, blah. I could say that, but that's not the right way to do it. The right way to do it is you identify every document that records gets an instrument number. That's
Yes.
like a social security number. If you have my social security number, you know it's me. It's not someone else because that number is only given to me.
Yes.
Same thing with the instrument number. So I tell her she needs to identify that instrument number. She doesn't know what an instrument number is. She says, okay, great, I got it. I'll put the instrument number on there. She sends the document back with the APN number on it, the assessor's
Uh,
number. I say,
oh,
so I realized she doesn't even know what an instrument number is. I
wow.
call her paralegal. Paralegal,
Mm,
I know what an instrument number is. You're talking about the bold number. I said, yep, that's the number, blah, blah, blah. They still send it back the same way. Then I get yelled at for continually going back to her saying, you still don't
mm,
have it correct.
mm, mm.
Long story short, they finally get it correct. I told her, I said, hey, your office manager paralegal knows what I'm referring to. If you communicate with her, she will. They finally get it correct, and we got it done. That deal closed in like June the following year when
Oh
it
my God.
should have
Wow.
closed October. I mean, all that time of delay and waste and money, you know. So that was one that sticks with me. Another one is this one just closed recently. That's why it's the top of mind. But it's just deals that have so many moving parts.
Yeah.
Um, there were originally 9 owners, then one dies, then it goes to 8 owners,
Mm,
then another one dies. They do a probate case. They don't record the documentation, so they do a probate, but no one knows they do because there's no recorded documentation. So they don't record the orders. Um,
mm.
this is the part that really is just weird. They're all siblings. They're all
Oh
siblings.
wow. Yeah.
Okay. Imagine, imagine me and you are siblings, and we have 6 other siblings. And in 2020, I do a deed, and I do the deed to all of our siblings, even though in 2010, 2 of our siblings died.
Mm,
So you have
mm,
people that died. There's deeds after their death, deeding the property to them, even though there's
mm.
it was just a spider web of issues. It was a spider, and so much had to be done. And then the last thing that happened is one of the parties was incapacitated. You know, here we are
Mm.
days before closing, and we don't know that we're dealing with someone that's incapacitated. We think we're going to
Wow.
get this person. So you know, information wasn't shared in the beginning. You
Yeah.
know, spider web of issues with the property, and different things had to be handled different ways. This one already had a
Yeah.
probate case, but it was just so,
Uh,
you
hot
know, what
mess.
a hot mess. You know, one thing that happens, and I'm going to bring this up because this is kind of along those same lines. My
Yeah.
mother my mother, who's 82, received a notice about a lawsuit. And I'll cut to the chase. Here's what happened. My mom's great or great great grandfather had a share of a property, had like 1/12 of a property. Well,
Mm.
all that generation died, and they all had 10, 20 kids. All that generation died, then they had some kids. So my mom now owns like 0.17% of this property,
Mm. Mm.
minuscule little percentage. The
Yeah.
reason I bring that up is I'm all for families keeping property. You know, one thing that they are not making more of is dirt. They're
Right.
not making more earth. They're not making more land. If you own land, I think, yeah, keep it, maintain that. That's a hot commodity that is very scarce. And so I'm all for that, but you get to a point where it gets to be too much. You know,
Yeah.
we were talking before we got started, and I said I have 4 boys. If I leave property to those 4 boys, then let's say each of them have 2 kids. Now we're talking 8. Let's say each of those have
Yeah.
2 kids. Now it just grows to be so many to where everybody's portion is so small that
It's
it's
small.
not worth.
Yeah.
In the situation with my mother, you know, if she owned a sizable portion, we would get an attorney and deal with the case that's going on and blah blah blah. She owns such a little amount; it doesn't make any. Why would we throw good money at bad money?
Right. Right.
You know,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
so so that's another thing that is, I've had a lot of scenarios where there's so many siblings, they never all get along. There's always one that
Yeah.
wants to do. Matter of fact, today an attorney is going to court on one that
Mm.
had another one with 8 siblings, eight siblings. 2 of them are deceased. There's fighting amongst the rest, and 2 parties finally said,
Mm.
we're going to be the ones that are going to do something. The other ones aren't doing anything. They're not
Mm.
probating and they said, we're going to go to an attorney and get this resolved so we can sell the property. So they're supposed to confirm the sale today, in fact, on that one. But
Wow.
as more people get involved, and then now I'm not dealing with my brother because so he passed away. Now it's his kids. You know, it just gets to be more and more convoluted and more difficult. So
Yeah.
that you asked for a case that stands out. I think I just shared like 3 or 4 different scenarios, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's it's the people. It's typically the people, either
Mm.
people doing stuff on the property that doesn't make sense, like the property's in a trust, but they record a deed outside that, all those kind of things, or just the infighting between the heirs and or people who are taking over the property.
You know, if you could, you and I both know this, but if you could, for our listeners, explain the difference between when someone has a trust versus not having a trust, and where does that end up? Because a lot of people don't really understand what probate is versus a trust, right? So maybe you
Yeah,
can speak to that.
that's very good. And I'll start with square one. In California, if John Doe passes away and the property is titled in his name, not his corporation, not trustee of his trust, his name as as a person, that property is going to sell that property or to do anything with that property, to get a loan and refinance or to do anything like that, you're going to have to see a judge. See a judge. You're going to have to either do a probate, or if there was a trust but he didn't put the property in the trust name, then you have to have a lawsuit called a Hickstead to get the property put in the trust. So that's the key. If someone dies in their own name, typically it means it's a probate. Usually, if they have a trust, they then title the property in the trustee of the trust. So, for instance, if I have a property and then I go to an attorney and create a trust, I'll do a deed from Kevin Sayles, an individual how I hold title now, to Kevin Sayles, trustee of the blah, blah, blah trust. Okay. When you do that, then the property is in the trust, right? So when a property is in a trust, it's on the real estate side with what we do in title and escrow. It's pretty simple. If the property is in the trust, we would want a copy of the trust and the person's death certificate, and you have to have a certified copy of that because we record a document with that. And we look in the trust, and the trust will dictate who the successor trustee is, who's the person that takes over when the original trustee is gone. We would go based on that. That would be the seller. The trust is going to pretty much dictate what happens from there, and then the property moves forward and is sold. Now, there's legal things that aren't my end of the business, like there's notifications that they have to do and all that. For that, you get trust administration so that the attorney can guide you on that. But from
Right.
standpoint of title and escrow, when they provide the trust, they provide the death certificate, and we're ready when they are for them to sell that property for the most part.
Right.
When someone dies with the property in their name, it's going to have to go through probate.
Yeah.
So then the difference is they have to file in court, wait for someone to be appointed, then they have the powers to be able to move the property forward. There's different types of probate transactions it could be. So depending on what happens in that court case would determine how the sale of the property takes place from there. So the key is if they have the property in their individual name, it's going to go through probate. They got to pay all the court costs for probate. They have to pay all the attorney's fees for probate, etc. And
Yep.
it's a more costly endeavor.
Otherwise, you handle your business up front, you get yourself a trust, you put the property in the trust. That way it's protected. And ideally from there, I think what a lot of people don't, I've seen where people have a trust, but they've never recorded what is dictated throughout that trust. It hasn't been properly recorded, let's just put it like that. Or I've had scenarios where people have misplaced their trust, couldn't find the trust, and we ultimately have to go to probate and do a Hexstead, as you said. So there's really, I think the key here for people to really recognize is that you must get the appropriate specialist that is going to support you and guide you and protect you ultimately. I see a lot of people filing pro per meaning they're filing and they're representing themselves, which is a recipe for a nightmare or a train wreck or whatever you want to call it. And I do have 3 cases right now that have had to be rerouted, redirected because they filed on their own. Folks, you got to understand, you're not an attorney, and particularly a probate specialist. There are so many fine lines and so many little intricate details with the law that you can't possibly know and or protect yourself. So please do not try to, as they would say, please don't do this at home alone. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
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 I had an attorney that I've known and worked with for many over 2 decades, and he years back, he said, I'm going to start doing probate. I said, okay, cool. We did the first deal. And then I didn't hear from him on probate transactions for a while. And I
Mm.
asked him, I said, hey, I thought you were starting to do probate. He goes, no, I'm leaving that stuff alone. That was too difficult. There's a lot of logistics. There's a lot of
Yeah.
timelines. You have to do this at this time. I don't know all that stuff because I'm not an attorney. I don't deal with the attorney side. I deal with the title and escrow portion, right? But
Yeah.
there's a lot of that goes on in the background that I kind of know about. I just, wouldn't do it
Mm.
myself. And it's a lot of stuff they have to know. And he was
Yeah.
like, I think his thought was, I thought it was going to be easy, and it's not. And since then, now he does do more of it, but he tries to stick to simple, easy cases. He doesn't go for the complicated ones.
Yes, yes, yes. You know, I don't I don't blame him. There's certain things that we just like, that's not in my lane. Let me get the person who specializes in that. But I do have a tremendous amount of respect for niches. I believe that when you carve yourself out a niche, in whatever industry you're working in, people then come to you for your specialization. They come to you because they know you are the expert in that space. And that's really, I think very powerful. Um, you know, Let me see if I have any other in inquiries here. Um, I know you've authored a couple of different books that are relating to wholesaling and probate. Um, what hmm, I wanted to ask you, what was the motivation behind you creating your books and authoring your books?
That's a very good question. So, um, you know, with probate real estate, the questions are always the same. If a
Yeah,
new agent goes and finds a property, and they go, "Oh yeah, I talked to the son. It was his dad's property. Property's in his dad's name. It's a probate." I know all the questions they're gonna ask me. I know all
yeah,
the questions that I need to ask them. I mean, it's the same thing over and over.
yeah,
So this happened back sometime after, probably around 2012, 2013. I answer a phone call from an agent, and I go through that same list of questions, and I give them the answers and get them started on the path so we can get this probate deal, off and running. Here's the
yeah.
information you can get, blah blah blah. Hang up that phone, and literally before I could sit my phone down, my phone rings again. Exact same call. Two agents that don't know each other, two
Wow.
totally different people. Exact same call, two totally different scenarios.
Mhm.
And I realized, I'm of that. You can see probably by the gray hair that I'm of that age group where we used to have a physical encyclopedia, right?
Right.
If I wanted to write a book report in school or a report on the cheetah, I go grab the CH book. I look in
Yep.
there. Oh, a cheetah runs 70 miles an hour. It lives in this area, but it gives the whole breakdown. And I
Yep.
thought, when I got that second call, when I hung up, I was like, there needs to be an encyclopedia
Yep.
for people so that they understand how probate sales should work. And it's funny thinking back. I should have named it the Encyclopedia of Probate anyway. So that was my
Uh,
mindset in writing it. My mindset was, let's provide the information that they'll need so it could be a resource so that people remember,
yeah.
oh, this is how long you have to wait after the notice of proposed action. This is how this happens. This is how that happens. And it's funny because sometimes, I guess in my old age, things will get mixed up in my head, and I'll go to my bookshelf and grab the book and go, oh yeah, it is 15 days. It's not 10. Because sometimes dates will get mixed up. So
Yeah.
so it's just that was the motivation right there. So many times, but those two calls back to back was like, there's got to be a resource out there where people can
Yep.
have it.
Yep.
So that was the reason for that one. Now, the second book, The Wholesaler's Guide to Closing Real Estate Deals, that name was chosen for lack of a better word. What
Mhm.
that and I have in the description and on Amazon, they put information so that people don't get confused. This book is not about, oh, how to go find wholesale deals, how to talk to the person, how to judge
Yeah.
them. It's none of that at all.
Wow. Okay.
This is really, how do you set up, because when wholesaling or in that realm, the escrow process and closing the escrow and title process
Yeah.
is extremely important.
Yeah.
And if the title of the book didn't have to be what a consumer would want to see, the title of the book would have been How to Structure Your Escrow Around a Wholesale Transaction. I just thought of that right now while we're speaking. I'm like, that actually could have been a good name for it. But
Yeah.
it because everything in that book is it's more advanced. I tell people that are brand new, you should buy it, but don't read it right now. Read it when you have a couple deals or you're working on some deals, because it's about all the idiosyncrasies and the challenges when you have, for instance, let's say people would try to wholesale an REO. Well, the bank
Yeah.
that's selling the property won't let you change the buyer's name. So how do you close the transaction? What do you do in the escrow to secure people's funds, et cetera? You have a situation where maybe it's a short sale in the same scenario. They won't let you change the buyer's name.
Yeah.
Um, Maybe you have a scenario where you didn't write an assignable contract, but you are ready, willing, and able to sell that property to someone else for a higher price.
Yeah.
And when the first mistake a lot of companies make is they think there's something wrong here. Wholesaling is the same thing that the futures and options market is built on. The whole Chicago Board of Trade. I don't even know if that's still around now with online, but futures and options that you still can trade on the stock market. It's the same exact thing. A future is a contract where I'm bound to do something. An option is where I have the right to, but basically it's to buy something at a price in the future. So if I buy orange juice futures, maybe orange juice is now selling for $1 a gallon, and I buy futures saying I can buy it for $1.05. I do that because I think in 2 months, when that option or whatever is ready to be executed, I think the price is going to be $1.20, and then I make the difference between that $1.05 and that $1.20.
Yeah.
That's the whole concept, and that's kind of the concept here. You might buy it, get a property under contract, and you find someone else who will pay more, and you can assign your right to that contract. It's just you're not selling the property; you're selling your right to the contract. So when people think about it
Interesting.
the right way, they realize it's not something shady or illegal. But what happens is there's a lot of people that do shady and illegal stuff when they're trying to put together the transaction. So that's why I wanted to write the book, to show ways to do it the right way legally with your escrow and title, and how you set that all up so that
Yeah.
people don't do it. I don't look good in orange or stripes, so I don't want to be wearing an orange jumpsuit. I tell people, let's keep us all out of jail by doing things the right way.
Right. That's right. I love that. And many people don't even understand what wholesaling is. They
Right.
hear the term wholesaling, and I think their immediate go-to is uh they're buying a property at a discount, right? And it's like wholesale. Oh, okay, that must be you're getting this property but there really is a whole there's a whole process involved with wholesaling. And like you say, doing it the correct way is what people need to really study and learn and
Right.
be educated on, is
Yeah.
how to do it the correct way.
And one of the biggest challenges with that is, if you do business in other states, you'll realize we're not really the United States of America. We're more like the United Countries of America. The
Uh,
laws in other states can be so different that it's like
so
another country.
different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for decades, I have had this where people call me with an idea or a concept or something they want to do, and I'm like, that might work in Texas or Wisconsin or New York, where the online trainer came from that taught you that. But
Yeah.
in here, you can't do it that way, because our laws are different, and things don't work the same way with our closings and all that kind of thing. So I that's a challenging situation. I tell people. I was talking to an investor yesterday. I was talking to another person who's from Texas. She's a real estate agent from Texas,
Yeah.
and she didn't understand how our closings go here. So it's common that I'm explaining to people, yeah, here's the way that works here, and it's different in other states. So
Yeah.
the rules and how you do things can completely change when you're in, California.
Yeah.
And in
There's
Southern California, we do business differently than the rest of the nation. We even do business differently than Northern California.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. It's very intricate when you get down to not just like the nation, and then you have the state specific, and then you have the county specifics.
Right.
So there's certain things you can do in certain counties, like like the closing date. In LA County, we can't close and we can't fund and close on the same day, right? But in Orange County, depending, right, there are certain uh um recording offices that will allow you to close in the same day. They call it a special, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And you have a timeline, in Orange County, you have up until like 2 or 3 o'clock. San Bernardino County, it's earlier, like 10 or 11, and in other states. So that's because in California, we close and consider it closed and do everything final after the document records. In
Uh-huh.
other states, they don't. I bought a property in Chicago. We closed escrow on November 1st. Our deed didn't record till the day before Thanksgiving. It was like November 20 something that year. And for me as a Californian, I'm like, I don't understand. Like, how am I not in jeopardy? How is this not a problem?
Right,
But that's
right.
the way they do business there. So things are done differently in different areas, and you can't always take you can't take all of your California real estate knowledge and apply all of it to another
Yeah,
area, vice
yeah,
versa.
yeah. Well, that's why they require licensing in the various states. You
I
have to
love
go through your proper education in order to understand that state specific requirements and guidelines, etc.
that's
So
right.
yeah, if I think I'm gonna go to Nevada and chill out as and retire or whatever, I would have to get a like if I intended to do any real estate in Nevada, I have to get my Nevada real estate license.
Right, right.
And who knows how gnarly it'll be for me, right?
Yeah,
Even though I've been in the business for a long time, there still can be very specific things that you need to be on top of, right?
that's right. That's right.
This is, you know what, Kevin, you are a wealth of information. I mean, big time. This has been an amazing um, interaction and just educational process. You just a walking encyclopedia. Uh, and that's really amazing. As a never say die professional, what mindset or attitude do you believe is essential for real estate agents, investors, and other professionals in the industry to be able to thrive and succeed in all these situations, challenging situations, normal?
Yeah.
What's that? Uh, never say die. What is that?
I'm going to say two things. So, number one, there's a term that some title professionals use, and I think some use it all too often. That's uninsurable. We can't insure that situation. And I have stated this many times, and I've never had anyone be able to refute this. When I say anyone, I mean I've never had an underwriter or a title attorney be able to refute this. There's nothing that's uninsurable.
Mhm.
You may not want to do what has to be done to insure it, but there's no situation that's uninsurable because you can get a court order to rectify almost any problem. You may not want to go through that court order situation, but so that's the first thing. Is my starting point is there's always a way to figure things out. Now, if people are going to cooperate or not, and all that may change the scenario. So that's the other part of it. So the first thing is that I approach everything that there's never a way. There's never, I'm going to use a double negative. There's never no way to close a transaction. There's always going to be a way, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Second thing is I believe in having a plan A and a plan B, preferably a plan A, B, and C. But
Okay.
I always want to have a plan A and plan B because plan A might not work and there should be another way to get things done. And this goes back to my underwriting background, like I mentioned, that I learned from banking, is that, what do you do? What do you do? I'm not a loan underwriter, so I'm just going to make this up. But what do you do when the FICO score requirement is 620 and they have a 619, but they
Mm,
have $4 million in the bank? It's called a
mm,
compensating, you know. And
okay.
I was taught back then, I was taught, don't let the underwriter find the problems. You point out the problems and then point out the compensating factors. So
Yes.
my conversations often go like this. This is going to be a problem because we can't get this or that, or I know we're going to want this. However, and then I state whatever the compensate. We can't get X, but we can get Y and Z, which is even better than X.
Yes. I love
And
it.
that's the way I approach everything because we always have if you bring round pegs, I end up having square holes in this one. If you bring square pegs in this one, I end up having round holes. I mean, you're always trying
Mhm.
to put a round peg in a square hole or vice versa, but there's a way to massage it and make it work.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's it's true. It's never like you say, everything is insurable.
Yeah.
At some sort of a way, you can get it done. And that's the kind of mindset I would want to have as a professional who's handling my stuff. You know, it's never, anything is subject to change and anything is possible, you know. So it's just a matter of how you want to approach it, how you want to deal with it, and who
Yeah,
your resources are, and who your, you know, what your knowledge base is, what your network look like, because that relationships have everything to do with things too. There are certain reasons why I only have certain title reps that I work with, because I need the comfort of knowing that they are highly seasoned and very connected, because again, it boils down to relationships and it boils down to knowledge base and experience. So that's important. So looking ahead, um, let me see. I'm looking at my time here. Okay, we're doing pretty good. Looking ahead, Kevin, what do you believe will be the key opportunities in the areas of growth in our industry?
that's a good question. You know, it's interesting because rates have changed and they go up and down and this and that. And I find myself when there's changes in the market, you have to adapt. You have to be ready for
Yeah.
that, anticipate, you have to adapt. But a lot of times that adaptation is not, oh, go create something new. Sometimes there is something new. You want to have something new. But sometimes it's, you know what, I need to go back to that shelf and dust off those tools that I used to use 10 years ago or 15 years ago or 20 years ago. And so, I can't predict the future. I don't know what the future holds. What I do know is, at least for us who we sit here in Southern California, we're in a market that is highly desirable. As much as people talk about leaving California, go drive on the freeway. Not that
Yeah.
many of them have left. You'll know. Not that many have left. They're still here.
No kidding. No
so,
kidding.
so we live in an area where, very fortunately, we have demand for housing. I've sold properties in other states, and go into it knowing, don't take my California mindset, don't take my California mindset. But then one property, after 30 days with no offer, I'm like, what's wrong? Like, what is wrong? That's just in that place. Properties
Right.
just take 45 days to say you don't have an offer in 30 days. And
Wow.
it was at a time when, in our market, we would have an offer in 1 week.
Yeah.
So thankfully, we're in a fortunate environment like that here in Southern California, for those of the listeners that are. And so I just know that the housing pie is so large, 50% of the business can go away, and there's still way more business than I can handle.
Yeah.
80% of the business can go away, and there's still way more. I'd start really tightening my belt if that happened. But the point is, the piece of the pie is out there. If you have an optimistic outlook and you continue to go after business, that it's there. So I can't predict the future. I don't know what change or what new thing, but staying relevant in our business is important, because there's always going to be a share of business out there for folks.
Yeah. But you said what I think is the real uh very, very important factor, and that is keeping an optimistic mindset,
Absolutely.
staying optimistic, staying positive, looking for solutions rather than problems, but understanding problems and having an optimistic outlook as to how you can get an, a resolution, a solution, an amicable solution where you're really managing a lot of emotions. Our industry is loaded with just the nature of the transactions. They're loaded with emotions. And as a real estate professional, we've got to be able to balance those emotions out and stay calm ourselves and help our clients to stay calm, so we can get through whatever it is we need to get through to get this thing done. So I appreciate your mindset, appreciate your willingness to come on and share. If one wants to get in contact with you to, have you support them in any of your title, um, what's the word I'm looking for? All your services,
Yeah, my title business. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What's the best way to reach you?
they can email me. My email
Okay.
is my first and last name, Kevin Sayles, my last name, Sayles, at LTIC.com, Lawyers Title Insurance Company. Always Google Lawyers Title. You could actually Google my name and you'll find my, Lawyers Title creates a website for me. You'll find that. You could
Awesome.
call Lawyers Title and they'll track me down. But Kevin Sayles at LTIC.com.
Great, great. Well, thank you again. I really appreciate you. It was loaded with knowledge and information and wisdom, and we will be able to pull a lot of nuggets just from this one interview, and we will circle back. We'll circle back, and we'll want to cover some other topics. So
Outstanding.
I
I love it.
hopefully you'll be available.
Yeah, I'll say I would love to do it. You just let me know. You say the word. Thank you, Toni.
Great. Thank you so much, Kevin. We'll talk to you soon, and you'll get you'll get a copy of this. And if you want to chop it up, I don't know if you've been working with AI at all in the world of title. Have they started having you work with AI at all?
A little to obviously to know what's out there and what clients can use and what clients will use.
Yeah,
I attempted to use it on to help me. I was creating an agenda for a training that I was doing for someone,
yeah,
and I wanted to see what AI would say should be in the training, and it was pretty good. I had to modify it a lot,
yeah,
but I think it's real good, especially if sometimes as salespeople, we have to be able to shift on the fly, right? If
right.
let's say a new product came out, you'd have to be able to position that, learn how to sell it, and everything.
Yeah,
But sometimes you have a little brain freeze, or how do I get it started? AI is fine. AI is fantastic for getting that started, and you just
yes. Yeah, yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I got this certification. It was a 5-day boot camp that I went through.
Wow.
First time ever, one of the first 50 in the world to become an AI certified realtor.
Wow.
And it's pretty exciting. And what they taught us was just mind blowing. I mean, I can't even imagine. Um, there's going to be a time where we get to where we say, how did we ever function without this?
That
But
they say it's going to replace Google. So let me ask you this question, Toni. What if there was what's the one thing that you think will be used most in our business?
with regard to AI,
Yeah, yeah, the one use for it. What will be the main use for it?
marketing, really cutting the way you are marketing, the way you are presenting your properties, the way you are preparing materials for all the various platforms. Um, the biggest factor for me is time. It saves you time. Like it cuts time down to you know, if I need to like I'm doing with this particular property, I have, but it just spits out like five, whatever you ask for, it spits it out. But the key is you really have to be very specific about what you're asking and you got to be super specific. More importantly, you've got to train that GPT. You've got to train it to give it prompts so that you are telling it exactly what you're looking to pull from it. So you want to understand what someone's pain point is. You want to understand what they're going through as a result of their circumstances. You want to understand. You want to ask for, what is once this is solved, what are they? What is their life going to be like? What are they going to feel like? How are they, all of those we call them prompts. And when you drop these prompts in, and then you lay in your ideal client profile, this thing will spit out exactly your audience, your avatar, whoever you're talking to. It gets very specific about that avatar, that client, that scenario. And then it gives you whatever you're asking for. If it's an article, if it's a blog, if it's a Facebook post, if it's an Instagram post, you just name it and it will do it, but it does it in such a short time frame that it's mind blowing. The other thing is there's a software called Opus, and in Opus you can take videos that you've done in the past, You can drop them into Opus. It will turn around and splice it up and edit it into other posts. And it's like, otherwise that would have to be done by an editor, right? Video editor. So this really makes life a lot simpler for a videographer, an editor. And it doesn't mean you can't put your own stuff on it, and you can't put your own spin to it, and you can't, personalize it to the extent that you'd like to. You can still do that, but it cuts out the initial brain work, if you would. Like you said, it's great when, if you're looking to start something and you need to figure out, like, okay, so where do I, how, normally when we're dealing with listings, we have to start with identifying the property and laying out exactly what the features are, and the all the stuff that we do normally, we can like throw it into this thing and it just spits it back out in record time. I'm talking, sometimes it's less than 30 seconds you can get a
Yeah.
full-on response, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Just
So
amazing.
yeah,
Wow.
there's a lot that you can do. There's also a video function. There's also an avatar function where you can actually speak into an audio platform, and you can assign it to an avatar, like you know,
Yeah.
but this avatar will actually speak and walk you through the house with my voice.
Yeah, yeah, I've seen some of that stuff. It's really amazing, and it almost it's we're gonna get to a point where there could be a video of Toni Patillo doing something, and I can say, I don't believe that she did it, even though I saw it in the
Mhm.
video, because
Right.
it could have
It's so
been something.
true.
Yeah,
It's
it could have been
it's so
something
true.
and so that's amazing. I have to run, but we should talk some more. I mean, I would really love to do. I always have liked the platforms that you've done. I think I've done your radio show and other things. So
Yeah.
I always like doing that with you, and I love doing this sort of thing. So I'd be really happy to do another one with you.
Yeah.
This month is going to be tough, but maybe in July or after we could do something else.
Sure. Sounds good. Let's think about a good topic that we could cover. And then I also want to talk to you about how we can utilize title for going after some of um, these very specific ideal client profiles.
Okay.
There's expired and for sale by
Yeah.
owners. I'd really love to talk about going after luxury uh, expireds and FISBOs and whatnot.
Okay.
I'm looking to build a pipeline of business for my agents. I'm pretty much, you know, kind of backing away from the whole production side, but
Yeah.
I'm not interested in closing my brand down, but I am interested in helping other agents to fuel.
Okay. I'll definitely reach out. I'm going to take a 2-week vacation towards the end of this month. I'll definitely reach out, if not before I go, then when I'm back, about some things
Okay.
we can talk about. I have some ideas for you.
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds
All
good.
right. Thank you,
Okay,
Toni.
Kevin. Thank
All right.
you.
Good to see you.
Take care.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye bye.